I would like to invite our third speaker, Mrs. Laura Escayg, disability activist, cause and effect. Mrs. Escayg is a writer, social entrepreneur, and a singer-songwriter. She is the co-founder of Cause and Effect with her husband Francis, a filmmaker, music producer, and published author. Francis and Laura decided to use their talents to create a better world for people living with disabilities by using print and video to humanize them. The main mission of Cause and Effect is to create an ongoing conversation about the impact that the deficiencies in our system has on persons living with disabilities and their families. To address and solve some of these issues by building a social enterprise that combines media and entrepreneurship as pathways to activism, employment, sustainability, and the creation of assisted living communities. Let's welcome Mrs. Escayg.
Good morning. All protocols observed. Thank you for having me. So today I was asked to speak on how important is parental advocacy as the parent of a child with disabilities and its importance in charting new milestones as you navigate these horizons with grace. And this young man is the love of my life, Isaiah, our son, who is severely intellectually challenged. The beginning. On Saturday, 7 December 2024, I fell into a very deep hole that felt indescribably difficult to climb out of. I cried tears for all the things I had lost. I cried tears because of the exhaustion in my bones from being a full-time caregiver and mother to 2 teenage girls and wife. I cried because I would rather have an easier life. And I cried because of the call on my life to work alongside my husband, Francis, to contribute to a future intended state. A world that may be more accommodating to a severely disabled son, Isaiah, than the one we currently live in, that seems to be positioned behind layers of steel, concrete, and apathy. A call from God. 29 years ago, as I knelt on a couch, looking out the window of my mother's house into the darkness, I heard a voice say to me, "Will you die for him?" I was 18 at that time, youthful, full of naivete and enthusiasm for life. And I remember looking around after hearing that voice and quietly asking, "Did you mean Jesus, Lord?" Because I was certain it was the voice of God that spoke to me. That very same year was the year I met the man who would become my husband and the father of my children. Then 20 years ago, after Isaiah was born, I started having this recurring dream where my husband and I were always in armor on battlefields, swords in hand, intensely fighting opposing soldiers. It was vicious, but there was no time for fear because we were fighting for something greater than our own lives. Becoming a parent advocate is not something you choose, it chooses you. Cause and Effect Organization. My name is Laura Escayg, and I am the co-founder of Cause and Effect Organization, an 11-year-old NGO on a mission to humanize people who live with disabilities through an ongoing conversation with society using media. In a former life, I was a singer-songwriter, pursuing a career as a recording artist. And before Isaiah's birth, I had managed to release one music album and was preparing to record my second. My husband, Francis, is a well-known and respected music producer, award-winning filmmaker, published author, and a visionary. And our respective skill sets have driven us to create and produce the work we have done, knowing that it is a significant contributor to transforming the environment in Trinidad and Tobago for people who live with disabilities and their families. Why media? When we looked around at the landscape 11 years ago, we saw that there were two major areas of discourse: politics and crime. Pretty much still happening. As storytellers, we decided then and there that the third conversation had to be centered around disability. If we wanted to begin seeing attitudinal transformation across Trinidad and Tobago, this was the milestone we needed to chart, and frankly, we were tired of seeing people with disabilities stories being presented in ways that did not honor their inherent dignity and humanity. Media has been used by the greatest superpower in the world to embed itself into the psyche of people worldwide. Think about the music industry and the prevalence of hip-hop music and culture that has permeated every continent of this world. Think about Sesame Street, an innovative and one-of-a-kind educational series developed by a Black psychiatrist to help educate marginalized children in the inner cities, not only to help educate them, but to help them to see themselves and for other people to see them differently. It is a series that many of us around the world grew up on, thrived with, and loved. Currently, think about how African authors, music artists, and movies have started permeating cultures across the world and reframing the view that was previously held about what it means to be from that continent. So why shouldn't we have taken charge of our narrative and shifted to where we needed to be? And that's what we did as Cause and Effect. We are creatives and creative entrepreneurs. And beside it being a natural fit, it is also a tenet in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. See Article 8, Awareness Raising in Disability. And in spite of that, it has been and continues to be quite difficult sourcing adequate funding to do our work, even though that work gives a voice to those who need to be seen and heard, provides a North Star for parents to access and educate themselves, and democratizes access to services that the majority of people cannot afford. What is the cost of this? $4 million. That is the value of the 900 plus minutes of video content and 4 newspaper series we've produced to represent the voices of people who live with disabilities. And I can assure you, I have not seen a quarter of that. Francis and I do this full time. We do the work that some people who have the resources either cannot do or refuse to do. The only way to bring about transformation is through constant and active campaigning, facilitating the voices of those who need it, mirroring our society, encouraging us as Trinbagonians to confront our own apathy, and inspiring courage in those who are here and who will come after us to continue building. We have produced print series that introduced self-written stories from mothers and fathers of children with disabilities, men and women who live with disabilities, and medical and paramedical professionals in this space. We've also produced educational video series on early intervention, the law and disabilities, autism, ADHD, and many other series that we have applied for funding to be produced in 2025. And we are truly excited about The Possibles, a docu-film about disabilities, and how these films will reach and touch the populace and possibly the change makers in this room. Why is advocacy important? In entertainment, we look at some artists who are so closely intertwined with their art, and we say, yes, this artist is a servant to their medium. And so it is with parent advocacy. You become an explorer, finding new pathways that didn't previously exist, introducing others to new ways of thinking and being that they may not have thought of before, and most importantly, you accept and understand that the work you have been called to do is not about you. It is what will serve a need for your child and for all children like your child. That it will fulfill a need for parents like yourself, who may need a North Star or a voice to speak on their behalf, because they may not be equipped with the tools and skills to do the job. Advocacy is boldly exploring and learning about new frontiers and territories that you didn't previously have to explore or be concerned with. Things like how the current infrastructure and ecosystem may not at all be accommodating to you and your child's needs, and then figuring out a plan to get people on board. It's navigating the reality that those who should be allies may disappoint you. It's accepting that all allies' vision for progress may not be the same as yours, because their disability or their children's disabilities are different to yours and requires a different approach or focus on a different aspect, be it early intervention, education, access to buildings and public pathways, job opportunities, and our favorite, even long-term care for our children who require care after we die. And it's also preparing yourself to engage in new and meaningful friendships and allyships that may last a lifetime. About grace. As I close, I return to what I was initially asked to speak about as one of the focus points of parental advocacy. What is grace? Grace is what you give to yourself as you navigate the emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual disability terrain. After you are thrown headfirst into a life you didn't expect and weren't prepared for. Grace is what you provide to the people around you, who you think should know better, but who you have to teach about your new world, your new turmoil, and eventually, your new joy and purpose. Grace is what you give to decision makers who do not have the benefit of your lived experiences as the parent of a child with a disability. It is forgiving yourself for the mistakes you make during your parenting journey, because we make lots of mistakes. It's a learning curve. A good dose of humility, an open ear, a discerning mind, a steadfast moral and ethical compass, and a lack of fear to speak and act honestly, respectfully, and the willingness to give as much as you expect from decision makers, to act aggressively, to effect measurable and meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Escayg, for reminding us of the role of media in advocacy, the impact of advocacy, and the very essence of grace.